Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halakha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 110 Seif 13 to Siman 111 Seif 6. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. So we continue and actually conclude our discussion of the making and baking of matzah. It's important that you don't take the matzah out of the oven until it's fully baked, and the way you can check is that if you break it and pull it apart, there should be no threads of dough left hanging in between them. That way you know the matzah is baked all the way through. The Kitzur reiterates that everyone should take charge of preparing and baking their own matzah. Obviously, that's not the world we live in any longer. Most of us don't have the proper equipment for this process, so most of us are forced to purchase our matzah from others, and we'll get into a little more about that discussion momentarily. The last thing that Kitzur says about matzah is that the matzot mitzvah, the matzahs we eat during the Seder, when there's a specific obligation al achilat matzah, to eat matzah, those matzot mitzvah have to be prepared for the sake of that mitzvah. And there's a couple of related disputes here that some of the commentaries bring up. There's some dispute over when that mitzvah actually starts. Is it at the stage where the wheat is ground into flour, or is it after that? There's also apparently a dispute about whether or not all the matzah we eat during the week of Pesach has to be prepared under these same precautions. Now, my understanding with regard to those perfectly square machine-made matzot that most of us American Jews consume is that, yes, it is prepared just as carefully, and in fact, by perfectly operating machines, with the exception of that initial shmirah, the guarding of it either from the time of the harvest of the wheat or from when it's brought to the mill. And it's not made necessarily l'shem matzat mitzvah, for the sake of the mitzvah of eating matzah, which is why some folks prefer to acquire shmura matzah, that specially guarded and prepared matzah specifically for consumption on Seder night. The Kitzur then turns its attention to bedikat chametz, the search for chametz that we do in our homes. We're to begin searching immediately after nighttime, or after nightfall, the night of Erev Pesach, so the night before your first Seder. Begin your search using only a single wick candle. It specifies specifically don't use a multi-wick candle or something like a torch. That's an invalid search. It's a little bit curious. Why would a daytime search, like wouldn't a daytime search with more lights, like a bigger torch, be more effective? And I think there's something interesting here, kind of along the lines of the walking the fine line, the finding the balance in between reenacting what the Israelites did and following our own, overlaid traditions and prescriptions. We want to search, but it's not necessarily about finding every single grain. There's got to be at least a little bit of a limit, and I think perhaps the direction to only use a little bit amount of light and do it at night sort of gives us that chance to say, okay, this is not necessarily going to be perfect, and the expectation is not necessarily perfection in our searching. We are, however, to search every room, search every vessel in our possession. Oh, also don't forget to clean them first. If it was me and I was ordering these seifim, I would maybe put that first, saying the first thing you do is clean, because this isn't actually the start of cleaning, it's the end. The idea is cleaning has been ongoing up to this point, and this is the final check. Now, you probably don't have to search your cow sheds or your chicken coops unless you're definitely feeding your animals grain that is chametz. Do your best. Don't forget to check pockets, especially kids. This hits close to home for me since I know my kids put all sorts of things in their pockets. The rooms that you're going to sell with the chametz in them to a non-Jew for the duration of Pesach, there's something interesting here. It says, since the sale is not valid until the morning, you're obligated to search them in the evening. Now, this was initially confusing to me. Aren't you going to find, as it were, the chametz you're intending to ultimately hold on to by selling and then buying back? So I think it's presumably all sealed up at this point. So really what you're doing when you search that room is searching for any crumbs or any residue left. What's the chametz you're not actually intending to sell, but may have sort of fallen around that. That's all for today. And as always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. We'll see you tomorrow.